Okay. Now, before we get started talking about saving for college, and again, thank you for joining me, and we're going to talk about why saving for college is important tonight, among many other topics related to it. But before we do that, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about MEFA in case you're unaware of everything that we do. MEFA is the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority. We were created back in 1982 by the Massachusetts State Legislature, and we have a public service mission to help families to plan, save, and pay for college and career readiness. So anything that your children might do after high school is something that we want to help you have a plan in place for them to do and to have maybe some savings to help them get a head start. So, we were created initially to offer a loan for college, which is something that we still do. But since 1982, as the cost of college has continued to rise, simply offering a loan to pay for college really wasn't sufficient to keep meeting the goals of our mission. So we have two savings plans, which we'll talk about tonight, the MEFA U plan and the U Fund 529 plan. And a lot of what we do is free guidance, outreach, and education on planning, saving, paying for college and career readiness and various career pathways. So all of this is to say that I don't know how old all of your students are, but between now and the time that they do whatever it is that they're going to do after they leave high school, you will probably have questions about what's the best way to get that accomplished. Please think of us as we are, which is a free resource for you to consult with any questions that you may have about that process, among other things. So, I should say as well that if you have questions throughout the presentation, as I'm sure you will, please put them in the Q&A, not in the chat, but in the Q&A. And as I said, my colleague Jennifer will be answering those behind the scenes and probably or possibly breaking in to ask me to address some of the questions that she might be hearing so that everybody can get those answers. So don't be shy. Go ahead and do that. The topics that we're going to be discussing tonight specifically are why savings are important. And so I have an idea that you have an idea that they are important because you're here with me tonight, but we're going to talk about exactly why and how important that they are. We're going to talk about those two Massachusetts options that I mentioned earlier. So the U Plan prepaid tuition program and the Massachusetts U Fund, the 529 college investing plan. I will say, of course, that any way that you save is better than not saving at all, so that the best way that you do save is the way that you actually do save. So any savings is better than no savings, but there are some programs that go a little bit further when used for college because that's where they're designed to be used, and that's what we're going to be talking about with these options. We'll talk about strategies for saving. So, what are some ways that parents, family members, students themselves have had success saving for post-secondary education? And so, we're going to wind up with how families actually do pay for post-secondary education. And by post-secondary education, I mean anything that they might do after high school. So college or career training. And, I've worked at MEFA for a long time, about 25 years or so. And I will say that the most common question that I've received from parents throughout that time is, how do people do this, right? So it's a mystery to most people until they get there. So it's great to know a little bit before you get there to be prepared. And part of that is knowing how families actually do pay for post-secondary education. Okay, so our first topic is why save. So this is a really important slide. So we put it right up front. And this has to do with myths surrounding saving for college. And so these are things that we've heard over and over again. I have had, discussions, arguments about this in my own personal life with people. But the things that we hear are my savings will hurt my financial aid. And we're going to talk about financial aid in a little bit more detail later on. But, a lot of folks have this idea, understandable as it is, that if they have money saved, colleges are going to look at that and say, oh, well, you have this money saved for college, so we're not going to give you any financial aid. Or I see you have $10,000 saved. That means you don't get this $10,000 scholarship or grant I was going to give you. And that's not really the way it works. So, the truth is there's a lot of financial aid available. Most families qualify for some level of financial aid. You won't know the exact amount you're going to receive until you apply for it, which is just before you go to college. But there's a formula for it. There are two ways to award financial aid. There's merit-based aid, so things like scholarships. Those are based on student achievement, so grades, athletics, things like that. Your savings really doesn't factor into those calculations at all. Most financial aid is need-based financial aid. So they do look at your income, they do look at your assets, they do look at what you have saved to pay for college, and that goes through a formula. But within that formula, the vast majority of the weight in those calculations go towards income and not assets. So financial aid is a difficult thing to talk a little bit about, but just know that the vast majority of the weight in the calculations for financial aid is based on parent income, and so not assets. So your savings has a minimal impact on your financial aid. The second thing that we hear a lot is it's not worth saving for college if I can't save the entire cost. Although you don't really hear it, but it is an assumption that people make. And so, I'll tell you, I'll be very candid about this. When my son was born 12 years ago now, my colleague at the time said, let's see how much college is going to be for him when he goes. And, we did a future cost calculator, which we have on MEFA.org. So if you wanted to check that out, it's on MEFA.org. And we picked a 4-year private college in the New England area. And I saw the number for 4 years of what that would be. And it was a huge number. And I was just sort of, heartbroken for a minute because I thought, oh, I can't save that amount. But the fact is, I probably can't save that amount, but that's not the amount that I'm going to be charged in all likelihood. So there is financial aid available. And most families qualify for some level of financial aid. So it's not the case that you have to save every dollar if you wanted to pay for college using your savings. But even if you can't pay for the bill after financial aid, everything that you have saved is something that you don't have to borrow or is something that you don't have to finance at the time. So every little bit will help. Even saving a small amount over time will help, and we'll see some calculations about that. So don't let the overall sticker price of colleges scare you from starting to save. So, the benefits of saving for college, it gives you more education options. It familiarizes you with the process of applying for financial aid and college financing in general. It can put a lot more colleges on the table in terms of costs if you have some savings that you might be able to finance. Really, to me, the biggest thing is it reduces or eliminates, hopefully, even the need to borrow loans. And so I know student debt is a big topic, as it should be right now. So savings is really, the only thing you can do right now to offset that. And as we've seen, it has a minimum impact on financial aid eligibility. So it really doesn't impact your financial aid to the extent that people think it does. And also, there's studies that have been shown that show having a college savings account for a child, if a child knows that money is set aside for him or for her, they're much more likely to attend college and much more likely to graduate, regardless of the amount that is saved. Even saving a very small amount will have an outsized impact on that. And it also, this works across the income spectrum. So low to middle income children, as well as middle and upper income children, have this increased attendance and graduation. Okay, so we're going to talk about two specific Massachusetts options right now, the U-Fund College Investing Plan and the U-Plan Prepaid Tuition Program. These are programs that MEFA offers. So many of you have probably heard of 529 plans. They were signed into law back in 1996 by then President Clinton, and they were a tax-advantaged way, federally tax-advantaged, for families to save for college. And so the way that it worked is you put in some money, it was invested in the market, and it grew without taxes. Each state was charged with creating its own 529 program, and in Massachusetts, it's the U Fund, which we'll talk about in a minute, and that is a MEFA offering. Since 1996, it has really become the college investment vehicle of choice for most families. And as I said, every state offers their own 529 plan. And so those 529 plans may vary some of the features according to which state and how that plan is designed. So, there's an account limit that you can save in an account. That's going to vary from state to state. The investment options, tax policies, it's federally state tax free, but is it state tax free, et cetera? Those things will vary from state to state. And just because you live in a certain state, it doesn't mean that you have to invest in that state's 529 plan, though there may be some benefits to doing so, and we'll talk about that as well. So that's how 529 plans came about, and that's what they were when they were created. As I said, the U Fund is the Massachusetts 529 plan. It's a MEFA offering. It is professionally managed by Fidelity Investments. So we have contracted with Fidelity. So they handle the investments and they handle the accounts. I have a couple of U Fund accounts, one for my nephew, one for my son. And so when I want to know what's going on with my U Fund account, I'll call Fidelity. And they are one of only 5 states with a gold medal rating from Morningstar. So that is an investment rating that we're very proud of. So that is the U Fund. Now, as far as specifics of how the U Fund works, it works like this. You would open an account at fidelity.com/ufund. And so you open the account, you put some funds in. The funds are invested in the market. And they grow, as I said, without taxes. When it comes time to use the funds, you withdraw them. As long as they are used for a qualified educational expense, you pay no taxes on the earnings. So that's how the 529 plan works. Specifically, again, for the U Fund, there is no annual account maintenance fee. So what that means is there's no fee that you will have to pay out of pocket every year to use these funds. There are fees associated with every 529, but they are taken out of the earnings in the case of the U Fund. So, to be candid, I don't know what my fees are because they come out of the earnings, and I'm not really obsessively checking that. I could be, but I'm not. There's also no minimum investment to get started. So you can open an account with $10, $5. You can open an account with nothing and choose to fund it later. So it's just an attempt to sort of lower any barriers that might be there that might prevent folks from opening an account. Now, this bullet point is important. It says multiple investment options to choose from, including actively managed portfolios, index portfolios, allocation portfolios, and FDIC insured portfolios. What I want to stress in that bullet point is that when you are filling out this application, when you are, say, you want to start a U Fund and you're putting in all your information and all that, you do have to pick how you want those funds to be invested. And I know a lot of folks don't feel comfortable making that kind of decision. I'll tell you very candidly again, I know nothing about investments. So I didn't know, I had no strong opinions on how to invest the funds. We are not advisors at MEFA, so we can't tell you, but Fidelity can explain. So you can talk to Fidelity if you have any questions regarding the investment options, and they can explain to you how they work. And, you can go from there. If you set up an account and you've invested in a certain way and you decide that you don't want to continue investing in that way, you can change your investment strategy, and you can go back and move the money that you have invested into a different strategy. You can do that twice a year on an ongoing basis. You can change your strategy as often as you like. So nothing is set in stone, essentially, is what I'm saying. So if you go through the application, you do have to choose an investment option. You can talk with Fidelity. They can counsel you, and nothing is set in stone. Savings can be used, the U Fund can be used at any accredited college or university nationwide, and even some international colleges. So one of its strengths is its versatility, so it can be used at any college in the country. If foreign colleges are set up to take U.S. federal funds, you can still use your 529 funds at that foreign college and still not be subject to federal taxes. You actually don't even have to use it for college, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but you can use them for credentialing programs and vocational training programs as well. The annual contribution limit of the U Fund is $19,000 per year. So that's the amount that you can put in before you start to hit a tax threshold, a gift tax threshold. and no additional contributions permitted once the beneficiary has a combined account maximum of $500,000. So that's the amount that you can have. Once you have $500,000 in your account, and your funds are growing, you can't put more funds into it at that point. Now, most people don't have that problem. It's a good problem to have, but that is the combined account maximum. And when I say combined account maximum, what I mean by that is this. If I have an account for my son and my mother has an account for my son, both of those accounts together could not exceed 500,000. If they exceed 500,000, we can't put any more funds into either one of those accounts. So it's based off the beneficiary, the student, and not the account. Jennifer, I see a couple of questions there. Is there anything that you want me to address or no?
Well, so I'm getting to them here.
Oh, okay.
There are a couple questions that are around the limits, which I think you
Hmm.
just went over. I think the questions
Okay.
came in before you addressed that. Um,
Okay.
yeah, there's a good question. If you invest in a 529 in one state, does that investment count against the limit you invest in another state?
Oh, yeah, that is a good question. And I'm not sure. I know that I don't think so is the answer. But I can check on that and follow
Okay,
up. Yeah. So that's a good question. I never had that question before.
that's a good one. All
Um,
right, we'll save that one.
yeah,
Um,
say that one.
Okay. Is the $19,000 contribution limit in the U fund across all children? If you have two children, can you invest 38K?
Yes. Yep. That is per account.
Okay. Let's see, what else do we have? How much can be, is there a limit as to how much can be rolled over to another beneficiary from one child to another?
Oh, right. No, no, no. You can roll over accounts to a beneficiary. That does not count as a contribution.
Okay. All right, I think
Yeah.
we're good for now.
Okay. Thank
Good
you.
questions. Thank you.
Yeah, really good questions actually.
Yeah, good ones. Right.
Um, okay, so I mentioned before that 529s are the way they work is as long as you use them, they grow tax deferred as long as you use them for qualified educational expenses. You don't pay taxes on the earnings. Um, And so the question then becomes, what are qualified educational expenses? So it's tuition, fees, housing and food, books and required equipment. So all of those things fall into qualified education expenses, and this is at, accredited colleges or eligible institutions. You can also use, there's been a lot of expansions in recent years past the higher ed or past the college purview, right? So there is apprenticeships. You can use 529 funds up to $10,000 annually for costs related to apprenticeships. Recently, July 4th, it was passed that you are able to use these funds for credentialing programs. So it doesn't have to be, before it was you could use them at vocational training programs as long as the institutions themselves were accredited and eligible to take U.S. federal funding. Now it's much more broad. You can use them for eligible credentialing programs and expenses. So this is new, but there's that dramatically expands things. Um, you can use funds for tuition, books, test fees, tutoring, and therapies for K through 12 education. Right now, that limit is like the apprenticeships, up to $10,000 annually. But beginning next year, January 1st, it goes up to $20,000 annually. And you can still use these funds for a one-time. You can take $10,000, a $10,000 disbursement for a student loan repayment, and that's a one-time. That's not yearly. That's a one-time disbursement. So these are all of the sort of qualified education expenses. So you can see there's quite a lot of them. I remember working here earlier before you had the K through 12, before you had the apprenticeships, before you had the student loan repayments. It was pretty much just locked into that college piece. So there's been a huge expansion in recent years. Bearing all that in mind, the questions are, what happens if you have to take money out for ineligible expenses? So can you do that? If there's an emergency or something, you're not able to use the funds the way that they were designed to be used and you need to take them out. If you take them out, then the earnings, you can do that, but there are penalties associated with it. So, and the penalties, is important to stress that they are all on the earnings and not what you put in to the account. So, the penalty is there'll be a 10% penalty on the earnings, and the earnings will be taxed at the owner's rate of income. So that is what happens if you have to withdraw funds and use them for ineligible expenses. The only wrinkle to this is there's an exception for the 10% penalty on the earnings, and that is in the case of death or disability of the student, but also scholarship. So again, if that happens, either one of those three things happens, you can't use the funds the way that they were intended. You withdraw them. You're not subject to the 10% penalty in those cases, although even in those cases, the earnings will be taxed at the owner's rate of income. One other expansion that I haven't mentioned yet, and you know, I think people really like because one time sometimes when you're talking to folks and they have young children, so much is unknown, right? So people don't know if their kids are going to go to college, they're not quite sure, and they are afraid that if they open up this account and they have to withdraw it, they're going to be hit with a tax penalty. So there is a new provision that allows owners, if that happens, to transfer 529 funds over to a Roth IRA, a retirement IRA for the beneficiary. So, again, even if they can't use it for all these new expenses, you can transfer these funds over to a Roth IRA for the student. There's some stipulations here. The Roth IRA must be for the same beneficiary as the 529, of course. The 529 account itself has to have been open for at least 15 years. So they don't want folks opening a 529 for a short time and then transferring money over to the 529. Think about that story that I sort of laid out at the beginning. You open the account when the child was young. When the child got to college age, it wasn't going to be in the cards. So this is the fallback. The transfer amount must have come from contributions made at least 5 years prior to the transferring over to the IRA. And the amount transferred is limited to the Roth IRA contribution limit of $7,000 per year. And then the maximum total amount transferred over cannot exceed $35,000. So we have an article on that, the details on transferring 529 funds into a Roth IRA. That's on MEFA.org. And so you should go and check that out if you have questions. Although, of course, with everything tax related, we are careful to stress that we are not tax advisors or tax professionals and that you should consult your advisor or tax preparer if you have questions. And I like this little sort of green bullet here. According to the 2024 College Savings Indicator Study, 48% of respondents were not aware that 529 funds could be rolled over to a Roth IRA. And it's because it's pretty new that that is the case. So once people do find out about it, they're quite happy about it. So that's good news. Um, Pausing here to talk about baby steps, and I'm not sure if you know about this program or not, but we're really excited about it. It was launched in 2020, January 1st of 2020. It is the first statewide seeded CSA program in Massachusetts. So what that means is that well, I'll say that the treasurer, the Massachusetts State Treasurer, and the Office of Economic Empowerment within the Treasurer's Office spearheaded this program. It uses the U Fund as its vehicle, and basically it sets aside $50 for every baby born in Massachusetts or every child adopted in Massachusetts, which they can claim by opening a U Fund account within a year of the child's birth or the first anniversary of adoption. So, you go in, you can, if you're having the baby, there's a form in the hospital that you have to fill out, and you can check a box saying you're interested. From that point on, we'll email you saying, hey, don't forget to open up your 529 account. You have $50 waiting for you. And if they do that, their account will be seeded $50 through the Baby Steps program. And hopefully that will spur them on to start saving and to keep saving. And, it's the first year of the baby's life for the child's adoption because, as we'll see later on, starting to save early really pays dividends. So, if you know anybody that this would mean something to, somebody who is adopting or having a child, make sure that they know about it. and they can go to baby steps to the page on the mass.gov site. Now, the other savings program that MEFA offers actually predates the U Fund 529 plan, and it is the U Plan program. And the U Plan is a prepaid tuition program. This is, again, before 529s were even created. So it's one of a few prepaid tuition plans in the country. It's one of the earliest ones. And it works in a different way than the U Fund, and it's for a sort of different well, not for a different purpose, but I'll explain it to you and you'll see what I'm trying to get at. Um, Basically, it allows you to prepay up to 100% of tuition and fees at participating colleges. All the participating colleges are in Massachusetts. It's a sort of more Massachusetts centric program than the U Fund. It differs in a couple of important ways. You put funds in, the funds are not invested in the market, so they're not subject to the ups and downs of the market. They are placed in general obligation bonds that are backed by the full faith and credit of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And there is a minimum to prepaid tuition. It's $300. Contributions are accepted year round, so you can go and set up a U Plan account and put whatever you can put in into it. You can put it in a lump sum. You can put it in on a monthly basis, just like the U Fund. You can have funds automatically withdrawn every month or periodically, whatever rate you choose. There is a bond purchase that occurs August 1st. So what they'll do is, let's say you go today and you start a U Plan account and you're putting in, $100 every month. By the time August 1st rolls around, they'll take all those funds that you put in, plus whatever interest is accrued on that, and that will be the amount that goes into your bond. And depending on the amount that you put in this year, that will buy a percentage of tuition at each participating college or university in the plan. So let's say that you put in $1,000 this year. That is going to buy 10% of tuition at a college that costs $10,000 this year, right? So you put in 1,000, college is 10,000, you buy 10%. Let's say your child goes to college 15 years from now, and they go to that college at which you purchased 10%. But instead of 10,000, that college is now $30,000. Well, then you have 10% of 30,000 or $3,000. So as the tuition rises, your investment rises at that same rate. So you're locking in a percentage of tuition that you purchased at each participating college and university in the program. Now, you don't have to pick the college or university up front. All you need to do is designate who owns the account, the adult in charge of the account, and that's the same in the U Fund, by the way. So the whoever owns the U Fund account has to be an adult. And then the student, so whoever it is that you're saving for, how much you're saving, and however you want to do that, whether it's one lump sum or you're putting in every month, etc. And most importantly, the year or the years that you want to use the money in. So let's say, you know, you're saving for your child's freshman year in college. You want to sort of figure out what year that is. August 1st, the bond matures. So if that's going to be 2040, you want to put, okay, he's going to be starting school in 2040. And there are guides to help you out with that. Um, and you can go ahead and do that. And that's when your funds will become available in that year. So as the years go on, you can continue to put more funds in and you continue to sort of buy a percentage of tuition. And that can add to the percentage of tuition that you already have. And so you can save up quite a bit. Now, this is locking in tuition and fees only, so not food and housing or, books and supplies, etc. So it's tuition and it's fees. And again, it is at the participating colleges, which are all in Massachusetts. So the obvious question that people have is what happens if my child does not go to a participating college? So you have a couple of options in those cases. The first thing is you can transfer beneficiaries. So much like the U Fund, you can take those funds and move them over to another person in the family if that will be an option. If it is not an option, you cash out and get what you put in plus the interest. and there are no federal or Commonwealth state tax consequences for doing that. So you get what you put in plus the CPI. Now, it typically is worth more at a participating college. So it typically benefits people to use them in that way. But if they don't go to college, again, you can, or don't go to a participating college, you can cash out and get what you put in plus the interest. It is only for use at graduate school. So, unlike the U Fund, again, the U Fund can be used for graduate education. The U Plan is only for undergraduate education. And once again, are there tax consequences for cashing out? Distributions from the U Plan, whether cashed out or sent to a college, carry no Massachusetts or federal tax consequences. So that is the U Plan. And this is the list of participating colleges and universities in the plan. So all the Massachusetts state colleges that are participating. And I'll leave it here for a minute in case you want to just take a look at it. But if you go to MEFA.org and look over the U Plan, this list will be here along with other pieces of information and FAQs and things like that. A lot can be said about the U Plan. Uh, it's an interesting program and people have a lot of questions about it. And I'll tell you, I worked with the U Plan accounts. We used to supervise the U Plan in-house at MEFA, and I worked with the U Plan accounts. So when people called and they wanted to check on their U Plan accounts, I was the one on the phone or one of the ones on the phone and, looking at the accounts. So I feel I feel I understand the U Plan very well, and I like the U Plan a lot, especially if it's used at a participating college. It can do quite well for families. Now, the other thing is you can use both. You can save in both the U Plan and the U Fund. So you can use the U Plan to lock in tuition and fees, and then use the U Fund for other expenses. That's an option too. Also want to mention some state tax benefits. Remember I said earlier for the 529s that you don't have to invest in your state that you live in's plan. If you wanted to invest in another state, you could, but there might be some reasons to invest in your state's plan. And so this is where we come to it here. There is a state tax deduction for contributions to the U Fund and the U Plan. So if you are in those plans and you are making contributions to your children, you are able to deduct up to $2,000 of your contributions if you're married filers, or $1,000 of your contributions if you're an individual filer. And so limits are per filer, not per account. So if you have 3 kids and you're doing 2,000, 2,000, 2,000, you can still only deduct 2,000. But it is, something that a lot of states offer, and we're glad that we offer it as well. State policies will differ from state to state, but just an extra spur to sort of help folks to start saving for college. So according to that same study that we cited earlier, 66 respondents said they would be more likely if Massachusetts offered a tax deduction. Apparently unaware that we do offer a tax deduction. So we do. Okay. Any other questions, Jim?
Um, so yeah, no, I think
Think
I
we're
got
good?
them all. Yeah, I'm
Okay,
working on the
good.
last one.
Okay, good. Just checking in. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, there were some good ones, but I think and you answered quite a few of them as well
Okay.
um during your
Good.
presentation. So,
Great, great.
yeah.
Okay. So going to strategies for saving. So what are some ways that we know people have saved and have saved successfully? A couple of ideas here. Number one, start saving as early as possible. So I would never say it is too late ever, but it's kind of like saving for retirement. So the earlier you start, the better it's going to be. So use time to your advantage. Start with a goal in mind, and we'll talk about how you can sort of have some idea of what your target goal might be for saving for college. Taking advantage of unexpected funds, whether that's tax refunds or inheritances or anything that, an unexpected kind of windfall, uh, you can save or save some of in your savings account for your children. Use automatic transfers. That's a really big one, of course. That is, you can set up an automatic withdrawal from a bank account every month or every couple of months, or again, however often you wanted to do so. We know that people who do that do tend to save more. I know I probably wouldn't be as successful in saving as I am if I haven't done that. It is worth it, though, I'll say at a certain point, rather than to set it and forget it. You can forget it for a little while, but revisit it every so often. So, as you get raises, as things change, you might be able to put some more funds in. My favorite one, get the word out. Ask your family and friends to contribute. This image that you see on the right here is a gifting page that was set up by Fidelity. So again, there are UFund account managers. So if you have a UFund account, you can set up a gifting page, and you see this here. You can put a picture of the child, their date of birth, their name, what date they're likely to go to college, and what they want to be when they grow up. And then you can just take a link and gift that link out and send that link out to people, and people can gift directly through that link. So, that is a huge deal, I think, for a lot of families. I know, I have an aunt who every time I saw her, she would give me $25 in a check to the U Fund for my son. And we didn't do it this way, but there are a lot of ways you can do it. You can use this link. Somebody can give you a check. They can send a check into the U Fund. If they give you the check, you can just take a picture of it with your phone and mobile deposit it in that way if you have the app. So they've made it very easy for folks to gift money directly in, because this isn't something that parents need to do all on their own. They don't have to take this on by themselves. And then finally, involving your child in the process. So kids like to know that they have money. We mentioned earlier that it's important that they know, if you want them to go to college, that they have much higher rates of doing so if they know that money is set aside for them. And they like to see their balances go up too. Um, we also have a savings calculator that you can use. I don't know if you can see this here, but there's a QR code that you can scan and just go straight to it, where you can estimate, sort of your rate of savings, what you have, what you're putting in on a regular basis, how old your child is, and sort of the rate of return, and sort of they're gonna estimate how much you're putting in, what the interest might be. Again, this is all hypothetical, and this is based on a return on investment of 7%, which is, I think that comes to us from Fidelity. So not, again, promising that this is what it's going to be, but just to give you some sort of estimate. So you can use that college savings calculator, and there's another tool that we have that was more in depth that we're going to go over in just a minute. Oh, here it is. So this is MEFA's college planning tool. And this really is a personalized strategy. So I love this because, I used to get, before we had this tool, I would be sort of frustrated because I would get calls from parents, particularly of very young children, newborns even. And they're very driven and optimistic, and they would often say to me, I just had a baby. I want to know what I need to start putting away for her every month so that college is paid for by the time she gets there. And that's really hard to tell, right? There's a lot of things we don't know yet. So we don't know, number one, where the child is going to be attending college. Different colleges cost different things. We don't know what the market's going to be doing. We don't know how much financial aid that they may be eligible for. So it was really hard to give somebody an answer to that, but you wanted to. And so with this is a way that that person could have some idea of what they needed to be putting away every month. So you can create a, a profile for a family in MEFA's college planning tool. You put in, family members, ages, and it will estimate, when a child will be entering college, what year. It will estimate based on the increase in tuition over the past years, what it will be in the future. And they have different colleges listed. They have different types of colleges listed. So it's going to be based on real statistics. Um, so we'll have some sort of idea of what college may cost. They'll ask you to put in what you already have saved and what you are saving or plan to save between now and then. And it will estimate what you are likely to have saved to pay that cost of college. And you can change the rate of return 6%, 5%, 7%, whatever it may be. And so get an idea of what you may have. And then finally, if you put your income in, it will give you some idea of your gift aid in terms of financial aid, which is grants and scholarships, which is things you don't have to repay. So it just comes right off the bill. So we can see here in this example that this family has a cost, a 1 year cost of college of 59,995, that they're eligible for 7,073 in gift aid, and that they'll have about $32,002 saved for college, leaving them a shortfall for 1 year of $20,920. So they'll be able to tell at this point, I need to start saving more money. I need to start looking at some less expensive colleges. I need to apply for scholarships, which is something that they can do through the site as well. And they can track their colleges and track their progress and do all that stuff. So, it's just a really, really valuable tool. It does a lot more than that, but to me, that is the heart of it. So if you want to take advantage of that, again, that is MEFA's college planning tool on MEFA.org. Again, this green bullet here, 89% of respondents from the 2024 CSI believe the value of a college education is worth the cost. So that's something to keep in mind. We're talking a lot about the cost of college and how you can finance, but there is value and you do get return on investment for your college education. All right. So I mentioned this a couple of times, which is taking advantage of compound interest. And compound interest is essentially interest accruing on interest. And so this is going to show you the benefit of starting early. So let's say Julie starts saving $50 a month when her in a 529 when her child is first born. Jonathan saves $100 per month in a 529 account beginning when his child is in second grade. Who will have more money saved when his or her child turns 18? And I'm going to launch a poll here if I can. Ah, yes. So go ahead, answer this question. Who do you think is going to have more by the time their child turns 18, Julie or Jonathan? All right. I'm going to end the poll because I seem to be losing quite lopsidedly, and rightly so, because 85% of you said Julie. You were correct. It is going to be Julie. Julie starts saving $50 per month in a 529 account when her child is first born. Again, bearing in mind the 7% return over that time, she'll have 21,536 to pay. Now I'll have 19,798, so I don't do too bad. But if you look, actually, it's interesting to see what what amount the interest accounts for that. So for Julie, she's contributed 10,800. She earns almost that much, 10,736 in interest, whereas I have to put in 13,000 and gain 6,598 in interest. So I have to work a lot harder to get where I was. I see a hand raised there. I'm not sure how to interact with you, but if you could put your question in the Q&A, I can help you. I wanted to draw attention to a card that we have, the MEFA branded gift of college card. This is a gift card that you can buy and for a gift and put in 25 to $200. And it can be gifted to somebody, and they can use that to put funds right into their U fund, their U plan, or their attainable account, which is a 529A. That is another 529 account that MEFA offers, and instead of being used for college only, it can be used for expenses related to, well, for individuals with disabilities. So this is available at CVS, Cumberland Farm, and Stop and Shop stores across Massachusetts. In addition to the uses that I mentioned, it can be used to pay student loans as well. So just something here. I know a lot of people, even though you can gift money in through the link virtually, I know some people like to have an actual sort of tangible gift that they can give folks. Okay, we're finally going to end up with how families pay for post-secondary education. And this is really important. So, a lot of times people think it costs, an exorbitant amount of money to go to college, full stop. I mean, every year there is a news story in late summer. It now costs X amount of dollars to go to this college. And we're close, if we haven't hit 100,000, we're very close to the first $100,000 per year college. And so, when people hear that, it has a kind of chilling effect on them, right? So, and I'm not saying that it's not true that college is expensive or can be expensive. It certainly can be, but there's a more complicated picture that I want you to be aware of. So, this information that I'm going to talk about comes from the College Board, Trends in College Pricing. And so the College Board is the organization that does the SAT, and they also do research projects like this. And they do this publication every so often, Trends in College Pricing, which they sort of take the averages of what college costs. And so these are national averages. So just to be aware of that. In New England, in Massachusetts, we're going to be higher than the national average on some of this. But for a 4-year private college, a yearly cost for a 4-year private college, and those news sort of worthy tuition figures are private colleges for the most part. Um, this cost includes tuition, fees, housing, food, books, supplies, transportation, everything related to the cost of attendance at a college. For a 4-year, 1 year for a 4-year private college, the most expensive type of college, the national average is $62,990 per year. So that's everything included, as I said. So food and housing, etc. But there are public colleges and universities as well. And if you attend a public college or university in the state that you live in, you get a discounted tuition rate. So the average cost, yearly cost for a 4-year public college or university is $29,910 for an in-state resident. So you can see already that's quite a difference. So for your 4-year privates, think about things like in Massachusetts, you have, Boston College, Harvard, um, Holy Cross, Emerson, Williams College, whatever. There's a lot of private colleges in Massachusetts. But we also have a public university program, very strong one, with UMass, Bridgewater State, Framingham State, etc. And so if you live in Massachusetts, you're going to pay a discounted tuition. So our figures are probably closer to the national figures here, but 29,910. If you go to a public university outside of your state of residence, you lose that discounted tuition. But you can see the average is still significantly cheaper than the private college of 49,080 per year. Now, a vocational school is a little tricky. This doesn't come from that same publication that the College Board does. This comes from Best Colleges, how much do trade schools cost? So this is 15,070 for tuition only. Vocational school can be really varied. So there's lots of different vocations, there's lots of different costs associated, but this is the best information that we have, 15,070 for tuition only. And then often the least expensive options are the 2-year public community colleges. So this says 20,570 per year. That seems high. And I think the reason that that seems high is because that takes into account room and board, which is probably about 10,000 per year. But most 2-year community colleges, all of them in Massachusetts, in fact, are commuter colleges. So you won't be paying that room and board cost or that food and housing cost. So they're likely to be much less expensive than that. And in fact, in Massachusetts, many can go to community college for free. I want you to take two things from this slide. Number one, yes, college can be expensive, but there's lots of different types of colleges and they have lots of different cost levels. The second thing that I want you to take from this is that this does not take into account financial aid. This is what is called the sticker price that is looked at before financial aid. And as I said, most families, most students will qualify for some level of financial aid. Now, I mentioned the two types earlier, merit-based and need-based. But just to give you an idea of how much money is granted in financial aid every year, the most recent year for which we have data, $190 billion in aid was awarded to students. And that's not like an aberration or a fluke. That is kind of where it lives typically, or has lived typically throughout the years. So there's many billions of dollars granted in financial aid throughout in the course of a year. So again, merit-based, awarded in recognition of student achievement. So when you hear about academic scholarships, artistic scholarships, athletic scholarships, this is merit-based aid, and that really, for the most part, comes from colleges and universities themselves. And colleges and universities have really different practices in how they do merit-based aid. Some colleges give out a lot of merit-based aid, some don't. It really depends. This is a question that you can ask colleges. Most of that $190 billion figure, though, is need-based financial aid, and that is based on the information that you put in, your income and your asset information, et cetera, on the financial aid forms. Um, and so, again, parent savings have a very, very minimal effect in that calculation. So, hopefully, you get a good financial aid offer. Once you do get that financial aid offer and you have a balance due to pay, there's only three ways that you can use to pay. Past income, meaning any savings that you have. Present income, the salary that you're earning while your student is in college, and you can go to a outside provider, a third party provider, for to use a monthly payment plan. So you can whatever you can afford to pay on a monthly basis can go against tuition. You want to maximize all the avenues that you can before you get to borrowing. Um, so the fact is that many, if not most families will have to borrow something to get through 4 years of college. That's not necessarily a problem. The problem is if you borrow more than you can afford to pay back or comfortably pay back. Okay. So next steps, start saving if you haven't started to save. If you have started to save, you can continue to save and take a look and see where you are with your goals. Talk to your child about college. That's a really important one. So, it's an uncomfortable topic, I think, for a lot of families as to what students expect and to what parents expect. And if those things aren't shared, it can result in decisions being made that are not based on logic, but sort of emotions, and that can be a problem. You can use our online tools to learn more about college costs, and you can go to MEFA.org and go to Saving for College for that. You can sign up for more webinars at MEFA.org/webinars, and you can sign up for our emails again at MEFA.org. Here is our social media information. I know Wendy is raising her hand, but I don't know how to get to you there, Wendy. Can you submit your question through the Q&A and we can address it? Um, and yeah, if you have any other questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to stop sharing and stop the recording.